Chapter 13. Without hesitation, Xing Xing started on the road the merchant pointed to. The sun was at its highest point. Sweat soaked through her dress, but she wouldn't give in and rest in the shade of a tree. She had to hurry. A girl couldn't sleep out in the open on her own. Wolves prowled at night, and what if there were tigers in the forest on the other side of the river? Tigers can swim, and Xing Xing had to reach the Langzong before nightfall. Boats sailed past on the nearby river, heavy with boxes, some sheltered by woven bamboo canopies and some out in the open. Xing Xing wished she were a bird, maybe a kingfisher or something dramatic like a painted stork. Then she could fly to a boat mast and perch up high, where the air was undoubtedly cooler. The cicadas kept a high-pitched scream from the tall trees, the elms and yellow-leaf poplars and hardwood mammas. White strings of sesame flowers lined the busy road. After a couple of hours, Xing Xing stopped briefly to rub her tired feet. An ox-drawn cart rolled by with a boy running beside it. A rope around the boy's waist tied him to the ox's horns. That's how cruel owners kept their slave boys from running off. The cart slowed to a halt, and the driver waited for her to catch up. "Climb in," said the man, smiling with the few teeth he had left, and patting the bench beside him. Despite his mouth, though, he wasn't old enough to be harmless. His bare arms were thick, like stepmother's, and he looked at her in the way that men looked at unmarried women in the village. "Thank you for your kindness," said Xing Xing. "I'll ride in the back." "With the smelly birds?" said the man in surprise. "I like them," said Xing Xing, and she threw her sack in among the crates of birds, and then had an instant of panic when she realized that if the man wanted, he could take off before she climbed up, and she and her sack would have been parted just like that. She practically threw herself into the cart, knocking askew a stack of crates, and making the birds inside squawk furiously, which sent up a din from all of the other crates as well. "What's inside this sack that you value so much?" asked the man. Xing Xing knew he wouldn't believe her words, so she opened the sack and took out a date. The corner of the man's mouth twitched upward. "Green dates are of no use to anyone," he said. "My stepmother likes their bitterness," said Xing Xing. It wasn't a lie, not really, and it offered an irrefutable explanation. The man shrugged and slapped the back of the ox with his switch. They rolled down the road. The crate Xing Xing had knocked into held hens, and one held a rooster with a crimson comb. But other crates held ducks and geese and swans and quails. The less fortunate headed eventually for people's ovens, and the more fortunate for people's private pools, which, like bamboo groves, were abundant the further south you went. Still others held songbirds for almost every home Xing Xing had ever visited had a songbird or two in a cage. Her own home had always had songbirds, and often mynahs. But somehow when the last one died, stepmother hadn't gotten around to replacing it. Xing Xing had been grateful for that when she'd brought home the blind raccoon. How mistaken she'd been. That cage would never house another songbird, for stepmother had smashed it to pieces and thrown it into the dung heap. Xing Xing snuggled herself down among the lowest crates. It was stiflingly hot there, nothing like the wind-blown perch she'd longed for on the riverboat, but at least she was out of the sun. A hen clucked, and an egg rolled from her onto the bottom of the crate. Xing Xing stared at it. Fresh raw eggs were delicious, and she hadn't eaten since early morning. This bird merchant clearly did not sell eggs, for there were no boxes of eggs in the cart, and the hen was certainly destined for someone's cooking pot, so she would never get a chance to raise the chick. That meant that no one in the world would miss that egg if she ate it. And stepmother was wrong. Xing Xing would hurry in her errand no matter what. She didn't need hunger to rush her along. On the other hand, the egg belonged to the man, and surely he would eat it if he knew it was there. The cart must have hit a gully in the road, for it bumped extra hard, and the egg smacked against the side of the crate and cracked. All of its goodness slowly oozed out, enjoyed by no one. After a while, another hen clucked and another egg settled onto the bottom of the crate. Xing Xing worked at the knotted string that held the crate door closed. The bird merchant was smart. He wet down the knots. The strings were meant to hold tight until they were cut. But Xing Xing's hands, like her feet, were small, with thin, agile fingers. After a long while, she managed to open the crate. She reached in and grabbed the egg. A hen pecked her hard and screeched, and then the whole crate was screeching. "What's the problem back there?" called the man. "No problem," answered Xing Xing, hiding the egg under her knees. The man stopped the cart. She heard him say, "Get in the back." And then the next thing Xing Xing knew, the slave boy had climbed in beside her. The rope around his waist and it was now tied to a single side support on the cart. The boy looked at her. He was as skinny as she was, and his clothes were tattered. Plus, he was younger. And then there was the matter of that rope. Xing Xing decided it was not much of a risk to take. So she put the egg in her lap and tapped a hole in one end with her thumbnail. She sucked out half the inside, and then she passed the egg to the slave boy. He finished it and threw the shell out of the back of the cart. That egg was good, and now her stomach awoke and called for more food. She looked around at the other crates, and the boy looked too. They shared a duck egg, and then another hen egg, and then the boy looked in Xing Xing's sack. He took out a green date and ate it. "Won't you vomit from eating green fruit?" whispered Xing Xing. The boy grinned and ate another. Xing Xing grinned back. After all, she had seen the size of the medicine jars in Master Tang's house. There were way more than enough dates in her sack to fill as many jars as the doctor might have. The boy seemed spurred on by Xing Xing's grin. He picked up a hemp stalk and that was laying on the floor of the cart. "Do you want to make a bet? Do you think that bad sounds or bad sights frighten chickens the most?" Xing Xing never made bets, of course. Besides, she knew nothing about chickens. They'd never owned them because father didn't like their smell. "I have nothing to bet with." "Come on, you have to have something more than those green dates." "Nothing, I swear." "All right, then. I'll just put on a show for you." The boy got on all fours with his face very close to the crate. He made a terrible monster face at the hen. The hen ignored him. He flapped his hands on both sides of his head as he made a face the second time. And still the hen ignored him. The boy smiled at Xing Xing, and then he looked back at the hen and chewed noisily on the hemp stalk. Crack, crack, crack. Xing Xing laughed in amazement. It sounded just like a cat eating a chicken, cracking its bones. The chickens in the crate went wild, clucking like crazy things. "No more of that!" shouted the driver. The slave boy took a small box out of his pocket. He opened it and held it before Xing Xing's face. Translucent, rice-colored insects crawled over one another, and their short forelegs and long hind legs intertwining. The boy popped a few in his mouth and raised his brows at Xing Xing. She had never eaten anything alive before, so she shook her head no. He put the box away, settled back, and closed his eyes, a grin still on his face. After several hours, Xing Xing heard singing. She got to her knees and looked out at a rice paddy where men worked in the waning sun. Their backs glistened with sweat. A water buffalo dragged a platform that the men stacked rice stalks on. They were harvesting already. At this rate, maybe they'd even get 3 plantings in this season. At the edge of the paddy, black-necked cranes walked on stilt legs. They were a common sight at rice paddies. They came to feed on the frogs. But Xing Xing spied an uncommon sight too, a cream-colored head and then 2 neck collars, one green, the other tan, and both with black stripes. It was a golden pheasant. She stood steadying herself by holding on to a crate. She smiled as she watched